Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. In this episode, what we're going to be doing is my initial power rankings for the 2023 season. Now, for those of you who are new to the channel, if you're just checking it out, what I like to do for my power rankings is I'll do the bottom 3 teams and the top 10 teams, and I will give some honorable mentions on both ends of the spectrum right there as well. So there is a lot to talk about in this video, so I don't want to waste any time, so let's jump right in. We are going to kick it off with the bottom 3 teams, and I actually found this quite difficult. You know, there were 2 teams, the bottom 2 teams I had settled almost immediately, but to get that third to last team basically ranked 30th overall, I found that to be really difficult. There's a number of teams I could have gone with now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw out some honorable mentions of teams who very easily could have been in the bottom 3, but for now at least, they have managed to escape it. And that's going to be the LA Rams, the Houston Texans, and the Las Vegas Raiders. All 3 of these teams, I think, have issues for various different reasons. The Rams, you know, a lot of kind of players who are coming at the end of their career. When you look at Matt Stafford, Aaron Donald, you know, they're in transition a little bit. The Texans are an up-and-coming team, but still a year or 2 away. The Raiders, well, the Raiders are the Raiders, you know, so I just don't really know what they're doing. Plus, not a fan of Josh McDaniels at all. But let's get into the bottom 3 teams, and we'll focus on them. So coming in at number 30, and this was really difficult, but I have the Carolina Panthers. Now, I do like the pick of Bryce Young. I think he has a bright future ahead of him, but right now, when I look at Carolina, their offensive line is okay. Weapons, not really there. I mean, Adam Thielen, but he's a little bit older. Miles Sanders, the Eagles were just happy to let him walk. So I'm not crazy about the weapons right now, at least in Carolina. Now, I think that ultimately he will have a solid career once Carolina gets some more weapons and maybe add a couple more players to their defense. But as of right now, I have them in the bottom 3 in the NFL. And I think their division, although not a great division, is going to be a little bit more competitive compared to last year. And that division last year was god-awful. Now, moving on to team the second from the bottom, 31 overall in the power rankings, and that is the Indianapolis Colts. Again, similar to the Panthers, I do like their drafting Anthony Richardson, quarterback. I think he's going to have a bright future as well. A little bit more raw, so it's probably going to take him a little bit more time. But right now, I just see the Colts. They're a bit of a mess. Right now, there's the whole Jonathan Taylor mess. That whole situation is not good. You know, they also lost another running back just recently, Zach Moss, I believe. He's going to be pretty much done for the next couple of months minimum. I don't see a lot of weapons there. They do have a good offensive line. I will give them that. They have a couple of really good players on the O-line, but they're just lacking a lot of talent. You know, I just don't see the Colts as being super competitive. They have a new coach, new system. It's going to take them a while to kind of gel together. To me, they remind me a little bit of maybe how the 49ers were back in 2017 when Kyle Shanahan took over. You know, they're a team, they're at least a couple of years away. Defensively, love DeForest Buckner, you know, Shaquille, Darius Leonard, great linebacker. Outside of that, though, they just devoid of talent. This roster is not great. So they're coming in at number 31 overall in my power rankings. And then at the very bottom, we have the Arizona Cardinals. Now, to me, they're also a team that's just a bit of a mess. They have a new coach, Gannon, coming over from Philadelphia. Not crazy about that hire, but look, I could be wrong, and I've been wrong many times. Kyler Murray, still a major question mark. Will he play this year at all? If he does, how is he going to look? You know, tearing the ACL, athleticism, will it be there? Could they potentially try and, you know, tank the season in one way? Maybe go draft Caleb Williams, trade Kyler Murray, try and get something for him. I mean, who knows? There's a lot of different options. But I just see this as a team where, you know, they lost DeAndre Hopkins, they got nothing in return. J.J. Watt retired. I just don't see the leadership there. They lost a number of other players across their team. Tough division with the Seahawks and 49ers being really good. So I think the Cardinals, right now at least, are going to be bottom of my power rankings in the NFL heading into the 2023 season. Now coming up next is going to be my top 10 power rankings for the NFL. Alrighty guys, let's now get into the top 10 teams in the NFL, initially at least, for my power rankings. And at number 10, I'm going to have NFC West rival Seattle Seahawks. Now, the Seahawks, to me, are a team who, you know, they had a really good year last year. They really outperformed, exceeded expectations from everyone. You know, when Seattle traded away Russell Wilson, we all thought they're going to be in a completely rebuild mode, but they made it to the playoffs. Of course, 49ers blew them out in the playoffs. However, still a great achievement in and of itself to make it to the playoffs when there were no expectations heading into the year. Thought Geno Smith was pretty solid. They had a really good draft last year. I think their offensive linemen, the 2 tackles that they drafted, are going to be better. This year, you bring in a couple of really good guys, Devin Witherspoon, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Those guys are really going to help out the team a lot. They have great coaching. And when you look at this division, the 49ers, of course, very, very good team, and we're going to be talking about them later here. But, the Rams, not a good team. The Cardinals, I have them as the worst team right now in the NFL. So the division is not that tough when you look at it as a whole. Plus, I think Seattle just drafts really well. Great coaching. That's a good recipe to be a top 10 team. Geno Smith, give him some more reps. And I just don't see why he can't get even better, especially when you add a guy like JSN to go along with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And also, shout out to the Seahawks. I'm not a Seahawks fan. One of my most hated teams. But those jerseys that they brought back are absolutely sweet, and they should be their full-time jerseys if it was my decision. But anyways, coming in now at number 9 in my power rankings are going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, looking at last year, Trevor Lawrence made a huge leap forward, and I don't see any reason why he won't make another leap forward this year, especially when you factor in Calvin Ridley, who they traded for a year ago, who was suspended, is now back. And if you look at any reports out of Jacksonville training camp, Calvin Ridley, unguardable. Basically, the reports we hear in San Francisco about Brandon Ayuk is what you're hearing about Calvin Ridley in Jacksonville. And you add him to Christian Kirk, Travis Etienne, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram. Like, they have a ton of weapons. I think the offensive line is pretty solid. Defensively, they have guys who are going to be developing. They're going into their second, third year. You have Josh Allen, who's been there for a number of years, but now you also have, Trayvon Walker. You have Devin Lloyd. These guys getting that experience. They got a lot of experience last year, big time games in the playoffs. I really think Jacksonville, in a division that's not great, with the Texans, with the Colts, the Titans are really hit or miss. I think Jacksonville could be in for a lot of wins this year and really be competitive in the playoffs. Now, we're going to move on to team number 8, and that's going to be the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that's the obvious move we have to talk about. Last year, they had Joe Flacco, Mike White, Zach Wilson throwing the ball. You go from all 3 of those guys to Aaron Rodgers. But not only that, they added a number of weapons in the offseason. You get Alan Lazard, who's very familiar with Aaron Rodgers. They're possibly going to add Dalvin Cook. Garrett Wilson heading into his second year. Breece Hall coming back from injury. And also their offensive line. Elijah Vera Tucker, Mekhi Becton. These guys coming back from injury too. That's really going to bolster this offense. And then we haven't even talked about their defense. Sauce Gardner, we know all about him. Quinnen Williams, another elite player. So many guys at each level of their defense that are really good. Jordan Whitehead, DJ Reed, CJ Mosley, a lot of just talented players. Can Jermaine Johnson make a leap into his second year? First round pick Will McDonald, someone I liked out of Iowa State. He's another guy who could be a huge factor for the New York Jets. Love the coaching from Robert Saleh. Jets in a very, very tough division, but I think they should be in for a good year because you got Aaron Rodgers. Congrats to the Jets. They should be a lot better this year. I'd be really excited if I were a Jets fan. Now let's move on to number 7 in my power rankings, and that's going to be the Baltimore Ravens. Of course, the big thing with Baltimore, you get Lamar Jackson back, and he's back and healthy. And if he can stay that way, this team is really, really good. You're also hoping that running back J.K. Dobbins can stay healthy. When he is healthy, when he plays 6 yards per carry, 100 yards per game, the big key is, can he stay healthy? We know that Baltimore, they love to run the football, but they actually finally invested in some weapons for Lamar. You bring in Odell Beckham. You draft Zay Flowers in the first round. You're hoping that Rashad Bateman can stay healthy. You have Mark Andrews at tight end. They have a very good offensive line, and we haven't even talked about their defense. Now, their defense is actually really, really good, with the exception, and this is important, with the exception of their pass rush. You look at last year, their sacks, their leading sack artist, Justin Houston, 9.5 sacks only. He's not there. Calais Campbell, he's not there. He was tied for second in the team in sacks. So that's my one concern with the Baltimore defense. But outside of that, good players in the defensive line, good linebackers with Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, really good secondary. I think Baltimore should be in for a really good year, especially if Lamar Jackson can stay healthy. Now let's move on to number 6, and that's going to be the Dallas Cowboys. And it's really tough, as a 49er fan, giving the Cowboys credit for anything, but I do think that they are a very good team. We saw that game in the playoffs last year between the 49ers and the Cowboys. It was a really, really tough matchup. That defense is legit in Dallas. Micah Parsons right there with Nick Bosa for Defensive Player of the Year. I think the Cowboys made a really wise decision to move on from Zeke Elliott. I think to me, he was just holding back their offense. You basically hand the reins to Tony Pollard. That's a great move. You add Brandon Cooks, another great move. You bolster the offensive line. I think that this Dallas Cowboys team should be really, really good. Again, they're in a tough division. I think that division, the Commanders are an interesting team. We don't really know what to think about Sam Howell. The Giants, they had a good year last year. The Eagles, arguably, one of the best teams in the NFL. So a tough division, but I think the Cowboys have a really, really good team, and they're number 6 in my power rankings. And coming up next, guys, is going to be my top 5 teams in the NFL heading into the 2023 season. And just before we get into the top 5, let me give you a couple of teams who just missed out on being in the top 10 in my rankings, and that's the Minnesota Vikings, the Miami Dolphins, and the LA Chargers. Those teams, really talented teams. You could make arguments for or against them to be in the top 10, I think, but in this case, I'm going to have them missing out on the top 10. As we get into the season, as we see games being played, maybe players getting hurt or not, that could very well change. And these power rankings throughout the NFL season will change significantly. But just want to say those were the 3 teams that just missed the cut in my top 10. Now coming in at number 5 overall, we have the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo, we know, is a really good team. They have their franchise quarterback, Josh Allen. They're getting Von Miller back, although he's definitely older and aging, but getting Von Miller back, a huge addition to that defense, as well as getting Leonard Floyd, being able to just get after opposing quarterbacks. I think they had a good draft. I like Dalton Kincaid. You team him up with Dawson Knox at tight end. The Bills love to air the football out. You got Stephon Diggs, you got Gabe Davis. Really, really good team. And the thing is, when it comes to the Buffalo Bills, what I think is going to be difficult for them is that they're in a really tough division. Even the Patriots, who would be seen as maybe the worst team in the division, I think that they can give any team a tough go on their day. You have the Jets, you have the Dolphins, and both of those teams I think are improved over last year. So it's going to be really, really tough schedule for the Buffalo Bills, but still they have to be in your top 5. They have a really great defense, really good offense. What's not to like about the Buffalo Bills? Now coming in at number 4, we're going to have my San Francisco 49ers. Now I think you can make a legitimate case that if you exclude the quarterback position, and I know the most important position in sports, but if you exclude the quarterback position, the 49ers probably have the best roster in the NFL. You look at all the players that are going to be in the NFL top 100, Pro Football Focus top 50, all of these things. The Niners roster is loaded. And the big question with the 49ers to me is going to be, can the quarterback stay healthy, whether it's Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and can they perform at a level where they're not just being game managers and they're also not throwing the game away. Like, you have to be able to air the football out, keep defenses honest, free up some space for McCaffrey and the running backs to make plays. But can they run the Kyle Shanahan offense efficiently and effectively? If they can do that, I don't see any reason why the Niners won't be back in the NFC Championship game again this year, potentially the Super Bowl as well. But this roster is amazing. Of course I'm biased, but man, just look through this roster and it's just all Pro player, Pro Bowl player, all the way throughout, top to bottom. Love it. Really excited for this season. I have them coming in at number 4 just because the quarterback position is not resolved. We just don't know. We don't really know what to expect. Even when they name a starter, it's going to be difficult to know who's going to play and how well they're going to play. Now, let's move into our top 3. And coming in at number 3, to me, is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow picked up an injury, which I think is obviously not great. You'd love to see him get more reps in the offseason, but they're going to basically be like, look, Joe, you're going to be shut down essentially till the regular season, so he'll be healthy and good to go there. You look at their weapons, and I think right there, maybe with the 49ers, the best group of weapons. I mean, it's just crazy when you look at Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon. It's just This team is loaded. They added Orlando Brown to their offensive line, and that's a big thing that's been an issue for them over the last number of years, but they've invested a lot in there. So that's really going to help out Joe Burrow. I like their defense. The one area of concern or slight concern would be they lost both of their starting safeties last year. But look, they have Dax Hill, 2022, first-round draft pick. They drafted Jordan Battle, I believe, in the third or second round of the draft this year to look to basically fill the void left by those guys. Outside of that, this defense is really good. Trey Hendrickson is a monster. Really like their defensive line. And I just think that the Cincinnati Bengals have just proven themselves. Zach Taylor's proven himself to be a good coach. I just think back to that playoff game in Buffalo to win convincingly in that fashion was just super impressive. They've added to their offensive line. I really like the Cincinnati Bengals, and they should be in for a good year. Hopefully, Joe Burrow will be healthy when the season starts so that we can really see the Cincinnati Bengals firing on all cylinders. Now coming in at number 2, and this is going to be interesting. I actually have the Kansas City Chiefs coming in at number 2. Now, of course, it would be natural to put the Chiefs at 1. They won the Super Bowl. They beat the Philadelphia Eagles. However, I think when you look at the offseason as a whole, they've lost some weapons. I don't know if Kansas City, on paper at least, has necessarily improved since the Super Bowl. I think maybe you could possibly make an argument that they've gotten a little bit worse, losing a guy like Orlando Brown, the franchise left tackle. It's going to be tough to overcome. At the end of the day, though, look, they are number 2 in my rankings. It's not like I'm dropping them significantly down. They have Patrick Mahomes. They have Andy Reid. They do have some really good players across the defense. There is the whole contract issue with Chris Jones. You know, we can see sometimes that can really affect players, especially early on in the year. You know, if Chris Jones isn't really there, mentally, physically there, then maybe a slow start to the season. However, this team is undeniably a fantastic team. I have them at number 2 overall. I could have easily put them number 1. Kansas City Chiefs, you know, they're just, you got to admire what they do. I hate them because they just beat the 49ers all the time, but I think the Chiefs are a great team, and coming in at number 2 could have easily been number 1, and I think that leaves no doubt as to who, in my opinion, is the number 1 team heading into the year, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. That roster is stacked, it's loaded. You look at Jalen Hurts, another full season, you know, starting, getting those reps, getting those snaps. He should get better. You look at the team, their draft was amazing. They lost Javon Hargrave to the 49ers, which is a big gain for the Niners, big loss for the Philadelphia Eagles. However, you add Jalen Carter in the draft. You add Nolan Smith. You add Sidney Brown, who's one of my favorite prospects at safety. You know, Tyler Steen, offensive tackle. He'll probably replace Lane Johnson when he retires. The offensive line, really good. You got, you know, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. You trade for DeAndre Swift. There's just so much to like about this defense as well. The pass rushers are ridiculous. You know, I watched that, you know, watching the NFC Championship game, the Eagles pass rushers just dominated the 49ers offensive line. And there's no reason why they can't come back and do it again. They kept both, you know, Darius Slay, they kept James Bradbury. This team is just stacked. And I think Jalen Hurts, in some ways he might be a bit overrated, but I also think in some ways he might be a bit underrated. I don't think anyone really thinks of him as a top 5 quarterback, and maybe he's not there yet, but he's really, really good, really consistent, can also make plays with his legs, and they have really good coaching there. And even though I really don't like Nick Sirianni, he's a really good coach, and man, the Eagles are just absolutely loaded. I cannot wait for December 3rd, I believe, or December 4th, when the 49ers play the Philadelphia Eagles. That's going to be a huge rematch of the NFC Championship game. But right now, and it pains me to say it, to me, the Philadelphia Eagles are the number 1 team in the NFL. Now, there you have it, guys. That is my power rankings. We did the bottom 3 teams. We did the top 10 teams. We gave you a couple of honorable mentions on either side. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, where you think I went right, where you think I went wrong. Let's get a discussion going in the comments. I always love having those. And really, football season just around the corner. Preseason games coming up this week, which is just crazy to think about. Football is almost back, and I could not be more excited for it. Well, guys, I really do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like the video, share it on social media, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll be doing a whole bunch of content all the way through the football season. You know how we do it here at Shifty's 49ers Talk. But I am going to leave it there. Just before I head out, guys, you know I'm going to say two things before I go, and that's the butt counts, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.